As a farmer, John understands the needs of rural communities. He has been a tireless supporter of farming and ranching, being one of the only handful of agriculturists left in Congress. Representative Salazar still considers June 15, 2007 as one of his proudest days in Congress. That was the day Representative Salazar was successful in preventing the expansion of Pinyon Canyon and stood up for farmers and ranchers, and most of all, private property rights. Representative Salazar continues to work diligently to protect the rural interests. He is currently pushing an estate tax provision that will eliminate heirs of farms and ranches from paying this dreadful death tax. This bill is supported by both the farming and ranching industry as well as the environmental community. Please welcome the Honorable John Salazar.
Thank you very much. How's Kim, Colorado doing? You fired up? Are you ready to kick some Army butt? Yeah! Well, you know, for Bob McConnell and I, it's something that we do that's probably a little difficult to take on the Army, but we have and we will stand up for farmers and ranchers. Today I didn't want to make a political speech. I wanted to stand up here and tell you about what we've been doing in Congress. Many of you know that I was successful, along with Marilyn Musgrave, in a bipartisan effort several years ago to actually ban the funding to the military for any future expansions of Pinyon Canyon. Of course, you know that that is an annual budget or appropriations, and I was fortunate enough to be able to land the seat, and I'm the third ranking member on the Military Construction VA Subcommittee in Appropriations, the very subcommittee that has the jurisdiction to stop the military from expanding here in Pinyon Canyon. So I'm very thankful for that. Don't ever let anyone tell you that it's un-American to stand up for your ranches and farms. Don't you ever let anyone tell you that you're un-American. I've still farmed the same land that my great-grandfather settled back in 1860. And I know that this land has been in your families for generation after generation. And there's nothing that gives me greater joy than to come home on weekends and get on a windrower and cut hay or bale hay. Last night we baled hay from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning till the dew was gone. But without farms and ranches, this country is dead. People cannot eat. Can you ever imagine a country where we have to import our food? You've seen what's happened when we have to import our petroleum products. During World War II, the Europeans found that out. Countries who could not produce their food were quickly beaten. We talked before about the GAO study that my brother, then Senator Ken Salazar, and I had requested from the Government Accountability Office. In that study, a very well-defined study, we had asked them to make the United States Army justify the need for expansion. For 3 to 4 years, I had been asking the Army to justify and to come into the office and ask and tell me why they really needed to expand this military base. I'd heard from many of you. Lon and I met early on when I first went into the United States Congress. We talked about how important it was to protect not only this land, but apparently since 9/11, it had really only been used once or twice in a very limited way. When the GAO finished their study, the Army did not justify one iota as to the need for this expansion. During the BRAC realignment, the first year I was in Congress, when we were able to get another brigade into Fort Carson out of Fort Hood, in all of the justification letters, that came out of the Army, they said that Fort Carson already had enough training land and property between what they currently own in Pinyon Canyon and what they have in Colorado Springs for all of the troops that were coming. And why is it then that all of a sudden Secretary Easton then comes back and he says, well, you know, we're going to take condemnation off the table. We just want willing sellers, willing buyers. Well, guess what? When your land becomes landlocked, you're still not a willing seller, but you have to sell. First of all, I know that some in this audience have been endorsed by Mike Kaufman, who is the representative from Aurora, Doug Lamborn, who is a representative from Colorado Springs, whom I've been fighting against since day one, because for them it would have great economic benefit to have more troops. But this is critical. You know, I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan several times. So I asked the Army, well, you know, much of what's happening in Iraq and Afghanistan is urban warfare. So why don't you just condemn some housing around the Fort Carson complex? You could have heard a pin drop. But you know, they think there's not enough votes here to care for you. Yesterday, day before yesterday, I wrote a letter to the Inspector General asking for an investigation of the United States Army. This investigation will show that the Army has defied, 435 members of the United States Congress, 2 presidents have signed into law that would not allow the Army to utilize any financial means that comes from the United States government for expansion of Pinyon Canyon, and somehow or other they find a way to do it. I can assure you of one thing. I am not a politician. I consider myself a public servant. I love my farm and I love my ranch, and someday I'm coming back. But there are so few of us that understand that agriculture is the backbone of this country. I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. There's 4 of us now in the United States House of Representatives that actually are still actively engaged in agriculture. I can assure you one thing, that as long as I'm in Washington, and as long as I'm on the subcommittee that I am on right now, even if it has to be an annual ban, the Army will not expand here in Pinyon Canyon. You are the true salt of the earth. When I see you folks, some of you come up to Washington and see me, and I love to, right away you can tell a rancher when he's in Washington, my guy's wearing boots and cowboy hats. And I always warn people, when you do come to Washington, make sure you wear your boots, that way you don't get manure on your feet. There is a lot of that up there. You know, there's one thing that I've always believed in. Before any of us are Republicans, before any of us are Democrats, we are first of all Americans, and we all love this country, and we all standing together will make it a better country. Thank you. God bless you.